All right, good evening, everybody. Today is May the 13th. I'm going to call the Charter Review Commission to order at 5:30. Roll call, please.
Ms. Crawford.
Here.
Ms. Heller.
Here.
Mr. Bentz.
Here.
Mr. Hochberg.
Here.
Ms. Stark. Here. Mr. Thomas.
Here.
And Ms. Berger is absent today. So 6 present. We have a quorum.
Item number 2 on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. Does anybody feel moved to make a motion?
A motion.
Motion by Shannon,
A second.
second by Chris.
Ms. Stark.
Yes.
Ms. Heller.
Yes.
Mr. Bentz.
Yes.
Mr. Hochberg.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Crawford.
Abstain.
5 yeas, motion passes.
So moving right along, that brings us to item number 3 on the agenda this evening, public comments. Yes, sir.
I'm Paul Holler and I live at 575 Red Train Drive. First of all, I'd like to make sure I thank the commissioners for volunteering. Your dedication and work is appreciated. I'd like you to turn your attention to turn to nothing. I'll tell you. Minutes of the February 11th meeting has, I think it was on page 4, under the section 4.13, the statement that city staff will review and provide recommendations. It was concerning technical codes. To my knowledge, the commission has not gone back to revisit this. If you have, I apologize for wasting your time. If you haven't, I think tonight's a good night to do it. It's my understanding that the staff does have a recommendation, and I would certainly like to hear it myself, and I think the commissioner should hear it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? We did talk about this previously.
We did, yeah.
What was the number again?
4.13A,
Thank you.
but had been suggested, which we included. Council may by ordinance adopt, augment, which would mean expand, obviously, or vary technical codes, etc. So that's what we have in there right now.
I missed the commission voting on that. So it was, has been voted on?
Well, tonight we will vote on the entire group of amendments, but that was what they determined when we did that section.
I don't believe that was reflected in the minutes.
It's in there tonight.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Apologies for the miss on that. Any other public comments this evening? Nope. All right. That brings us to item number 4, the final review of the charter. Miss Rebecca.
Yes, you should have received a red line, and my apologies, Daryl, because on the table of contents, it's hard to, you can't do the red line without having all the formatted. So just ignore it. But this is a full red line of the entire charter. The only change that has been made since we met last was to add back in sections 1303 and 1304, because that really does apply not to just the original charter, but also to amendments. And when I was doing my final review, I thought, ooh, we need to put that back in and then conform to city instead of municipality and city instead of village. That's really it. And I guess one other thing I should mention is we always have the meeting, the working group to discuss amendments, and we talked about whether or not the Lauderdale case that we talked about earlier applies to clerk of council, because we don't have, as I understand it, we don't currently have a full-time person that only does clerk of council. And so Mr. Breen suggested that we change that, so you'll see that in your draft. Go back to the original language that we had in 3.04. The clerk of council shall serve at the pleasure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then take out the new section 3.05, which corresponded to what we are now doing for the city manager and for the police chief. Totally different situations.
Yes. So the Loudermill case is the opportunity to be heard in a hearing. Chief of police, city administrator, probably the two most powerful full-time people in the city. Clerk for council is a duty. Clerk of council does a bunch of other stuff. And you're good at that, and you want to go to council meetings, you're willing to do it, and you can be there on Wednesdays, bang, you get appointed. Completely different level of duties and responsibilities and position. To the extent someday the laws require us to provide that to an at-will employee, as the clerk of council is, we'll do it. But I didn't see any reason to justify that being in our charter. Just that position doesn't rise to that level, and I don't see it rising to that level in the foreseeable future. So we've gone back to, we did add to the clerk of council and the ability to have an alternate clerk.
We left that.
I think we added an alternate clerk. So, you know, we now can have an alternate, which we thought was a good idea. You know, to have somebody on backup for vacations or absences, illnesses, things of that nature. But other than that, we are pretty much staying status quo on that position.
So those are the things I wanted to call out to your attention, the two things in 13 and then what's in 3. That's really all I think we have.
We got the complete red line. These are all the things that you've been through, just section by section. You know, tonight we can have final discussions. If we're not going to have final discussions, we're going to vote it, and then we'll go through kind of the process from here. We've got a nice detailed outline for you, so you know and can be conversant in that as people talk to you. You know, as you're being questioned, if you are on November, very possibly you could be.
And just so you guys are aware, you all have the red line, and then the separate one is just a clean copy of it with all of the changes. The single piece of paper, we just had an edit after the packets were ran, so that's why you guys have a random other piece of paper. But so just so you guys know, you have the entirety of the red line, so you can see all the changes, but then a clean copy too, so you can, it's a little clearer to read.
If I may, I did notice a small typo on 5.02. Just the second sentence has city at the beginning of the sentence, where I don't believe there should be anywhere that's attached to the word at. I think it should just be
It's a stray.
small. Yep,
Thank you.
small error.
Good catch.
You better get careful.
We're here for it.
Just trying to show off a little bit for you. That's all. The gold star.
My kids would call that a flex. Took me a while to figure out what that meant.
I know it's been some time since we went over Article 3.
but in 3.01, the addition of 5. Can someone instruct me why we carved that out from the existing 5? I don't remember why that was. So the addition of line 5, or of item 5, under 3.01. Is that just a change of language and we carved that piece out of the existing 5 and then bumped everything down 1?
Daryl, I think that was yours.
Yeah, so, I guess I would say, I don't think it's included in 5 already. We do have the adopt a wage and salary and benefit structure for positions. Often, I mean, what's to be deleted is authorize the number of positions and departments. But the general and capital operating budget are distinct activities of council. And actually, I think if you ask this mayor, he would say it's actually one of the most powerful things that council does. And so we thought it was important, I think, to delineate that that is a primary duty of council to establish a capital and operating budget.
Very good.
Makes sense.
Once they establish that budget, they've got to live with it the whole next year. And if they are going to go out of it, you know, they can't just, that's why they're always asking the fiscal officer, can we do this? Are we within the budget? You know, did we allocate for this? So yeah, it's important for sure. I think it should be called out.
Anybody else have any questions?
Sir.
I have a question, and I'm sorry if maybe you discussed this when I was out. What exactly will be on the ballot?
We're gonna talk, if you can hold that thought, that's what we're gonna talk about.
Any other questions, changes, additions, deletions, typos to the red line?
I have nothing further.
No.
Not rushing the process, but as soon as we're done with that, then we need a motion and a second to approve moving forward these red line changes and sending that to city council for consideration. Need a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Nancy, second by Matt to approve the charter as updated in red line version
Send it to council.
and send to council.
All right, Ms. Crawford,
Yes.
Ms. Heller,
Yes.
Mr. Renz,
Yes.
oh, Mr. Hochberg,
Yes.
Ms. Stark,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
6 yeas, motion passes.
Congratulations. Okay.
So that moves us right along the agenda to item 5, review the election requirements.
They have it, yes. This is her hard copy one that you got tonight. This is a little bit like putting a puzzle together, because you have some provisions in the Ohio Constitution. You go to Article 18, Section 9, which then cross-references you to Section 8. Then you have separate statutory requirements, and so you kind of have to work it through. You should have seen me diagram it out. So tonight,
And to her credit, we kind of tasked her with this over 24 hours ago.
A whole 24 hours.
We talked about what this should conclude, and can you put it in something that they have to. Perfecting you. Great job.
thank you. And this will be suitable for council. This will be suitable, quite frankly, for the Board of Elections and the prosecuting attorney's office that advises them, because they just don't do charter amendments every day. Or charters. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through how it fits together so you understand maybe a little bit better than just letters and numbers on the page. So tonight, you approved. The next city council meeting is May 21st. So it will go to that. Now, our own charter says it can't be later than July 1, so we're obviously way ahead. Then it gets kind of funny because council in the charter and its rules has a 3 reading rule, right? And these are the next 3 council meetings. And under the charter, they can just take what you did verbatim, no changes, or they can make some changes. Then you get to the meeting on July 16th. And they have to wait to pass it until then, because if you look at footnote 2, then you have these constitutional requirements. It can't be fewer than 60 days or longer than 120 days. And ordinarily, as I understand it, council would have 3rd reading and passage. Well, that puts us outside the 120 days, so it has to be the 16th. Then you have the usual deadline, 90 days before the election, to file charter amendments with the Board of Elections. You might remember in previous discussion, you guys determined that you were going to mail the amendments to the electors. There, it's an either or. You can mail, or you can follow 7.16, which would require you to publish all of the amendments in the newspaper for the first publication, and then subsequent publication could be on the city's website. So, since you had already decided to mail, I put the deadline for publishing the amendments in the city's website. You may choose to do that, and that might be an appropriate thing. That's for council to decide. Then we have the election, which this year it's November the 4th. Interestingly, there's a statutory deadline to certify, and constitutional actually, the amendments, if it passes, to the Secretary of State. That is 30 days. Well, I've lived through the hanging chads and all the other craziness that we've had with general elections in recent decades. The law says you get a certificate of result of election no fewer than 5 days or longer than 15 days, but it's riddled with exceptions. So let's hope we get it. And it's the date that's on that certificate of result of election that kicks off a 15-day contest period. And that would be any elector could file a contest with the Board of Elections. It can't be over the wisdom of any of the amendments substantively. It's where the polling place is open on time. If they close on time. And my personal favorite, were there enough parking spots? So, I used to say they never happened. But people think they can gum up the works. You never know. But it's interesting, you have this deadline to certify to the Secretary of State, and you may not know if you have a good election. So I didn't get into any case law research on this. Let's hope we just don't even go there. You get prompt certification, contest period runs, that 15 days runs from that date on the certificate. Contest period runs, nothing happens, and certify the Secretary of State, and you're good to go. You had asked the question about what are people going to see. You can do a condensed version for on the ballot so that it's not lengthy. However, the statute requires that you have full copy of the amendments at each polling place. And that's something we're going to have to just be confirming with the Board of Elections, that they understand that. It's, in the words of the statute, easily accessible at the polling place. And we also have to post the percentage required for passage. Now, there's no supermajority here. It would just be 50% plus one. But I just thought that was kind of interesting, but we have to do, at each polling place, we have to have both those things. And we don't want any flip-flops. So,
And who's in charge of making sure all those things are done?
well,
That makes sense.
that's one of those things that's probably, this is a defensive piece because we're gonna make it available to the prosecutor's office and to the board of elections, and we're
Okay.
letting them.
Okay.
That these things need to be done and most likely follow up.
Most of it's done by city and staff. As
Follow
far
up.
as getting the legislation to council, having the readings, making sure they voted on it at the right time, sending it over to the Board of Elections, assuming it's passed, the publications, the mailings, we're gonna be doing all of that.
Yeah, the city will do a lot of the legwork, but again, there will be communication. There should be a communication with the Board of Elections just to make sure they're on board and understand and all.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Any questions on the timeline or the process?
From a commission review member standpoint, when we submit this to council, is this our final touch on this? Are we attending that meeting, or is this our official handoff to Caitlin and to Daryl? That's the end of it?
At this point, actually, we have that discussion. If council has questions of the commission that they require somebody to attend, you know, Randy, we may be reaching out to you as the chair to show up, but honestly, my thought was, let's get them the red line. You know, Daryl and certainly Joe, who is the proponent of the biggest changes in this, have the handbook, police department oversight, and speak to that. So, yeah, I would say that we're pretty much done. Other than, again, we wanted you to be able to speak to this, you know, if people ask you. And I guess there's a chance that you could get called to a council meeting. If you're willing to do that, then fine, but not a requirement.
Obviously, welcome to council meetings anytime you want as an elector, but it's not a requirement of the commission to be formally present as a group.
Just said that. You can definitely come.
Fantastic. Any other questions today?
You said that if council goes through these red lines and they want something changed, that they can
Under the current
themselves
term.
vote it themselves and so to change. Okay, good.
If they do that, will there be a red line of the red line?
Yeah, potentially, depending on what they do. Mhm.
Thank you.
All I have.
They do have a little bit of a super majority. It's 5-7 versus a simple majority if they want to do that, but either way.
Yeah, 2/3 is
They're gonna
required.
need 2/3, whether they change it, whether they, you know, scrap pile it, whether they, you know, send it on. But my expectation is that they will accept it and send it on. I think changes are all very logical, but who knows? We'll see what they have to say when they see it. I don't want to speak for them, that's for sure.
Yeah. If there's no further questions, we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion by Randy, second by Chris.
Mr. Benz,
Yes.
Ms. Heller,
Yes.
Ms. Crawford,
Yes.
Mr. Hochberg,
Yes.
Ms. Stark,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
6 yeas, we are adjourned.
And prior to just being dismissed, you're adjourned, but thank you. To echo Mr. Holler's sentiment, you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Very well conducted meetings. Randy, nice job with that, but good discussion, to the point. You guys were prepared when you showed up, and there's lots of other things you could have done in those however many meetings we've had. 6, 7, whatever. Here. Double your salary, but it wouldn't be. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was wonderful working with
Thank
all
you
of
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time as well.
It's actually